Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Super Paranormal Chronicles. My name's Lee, your host, in case you could ever forget. And tonight I am more than delighted to have Father Bob Bailey with me. Father Bob is a retired Roman Catholic priest, a demonologist, and a spiritual warfare and education director at the Holy Sword Apostolate. I hope I said that right.
You did.
Father Bob, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I say, as we were just saying off air, it's been quite difficult to tie you down, but we've managed to get it, so we can hopefully have some good fun and some good questions tonight.
Awesome.
So before we start, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. As I said, I'm a retired Catholic priest. I had to retire early because of health reasons. I can't drive anymore and I have neuropathy, but I've been a priest for 34 years. And, still, the good thing is that when you're retired, you get to set your own agenda. So it's left me more time to devote to spiritual warfare, education, to the apostle, and all of that. So I'm having a great time with that, working with another priest on the West Coast. So the both of us together are trying to help that. I live in Rhode Island, which is the smallest state in the Union. And let's see, I'm of Italian, Irish, and French Canadian descent.
Nice mixture there.
Oh, yeah. That's pretty much Rhode Island.
Yeah. So let's start at the very beginning. What kind of pointed you in the direction of your priesthood?
Well, from a very young age, I wanted to be a priest. And I think the one who had the most influence on me was my mother's cousin was a priest from Italy. And then he came to America to serve in Rhode Island. And my grandparents lived next door. So he would come every Tuesday to have supper with them. And then, I was a little older, I had an interest in spirituality. So right after supper, he would go outside and sit and smoke his cigar. And he and I would just have a couple hours of conversation every week. And that got my interest. And, we discussed a number of topics, including miracles and the reality of evil, the devil, angels, and all of that. So I got a really great education, a solid education at a very young age. And I think that's what, gave me my interest in wanting to become a priest. From what my family tells me, it's something that they knew and that I've wanted ever since I was a child. I used to play priest. I used to play mass when I was a kid, as a lot of people did back then. And so once I was in junior high school and then high school, that's when it solidified to be an actual goal that I was definitely headed to.
So, being from the Roman Catholic faith, everybody's idea of the pinnacle is Vatican City, with the Pope and all that. So, have you actually managed to pay a visit?
Yes, I didn't study in Rome. I studied in Maryland, which I loved there. But I did. I met St. John Paul II. I had a private mass with him, and got to meet him. Uh, I saw Pope Benedict when I went on sabbatical, and then what ended up happening was the year that he decided to retire, I was going on that sabbatical. I happened to be in Rome, and I was there for the election of Pope Francis.
Oh wow,
So
that must have
that,
been a fascinating experience.
yeah, it was very historic. I can remember the night as clear as day. But
Yeah,
so yeah, I didn't study in Rome, but I got to spend a good, a few times there.
because I was lucky to actually visit Vatican City when I was doing the tourist thing,
Hmm.
like in the mid 2000s, and if you ever go to Italy, you have to go to Rome, and then you have to go to the Vatican City. You
Right.
cannot go. You cannot go to Italy and not go to the Vatican.
Right.
Am I right?
Right.
Yeah.
There's so
Okay.
much
So,
history there.
oh, absolutely. And being from Canada, I always tell people that yes, I'm from England, but I'm also from Europe, where the history comes from. Because over here you've got a couple of hundred, where going back in Europe and England, you've got thousands of years of history.
Hmm.
So, what kind of got you involved with being an exorcist and demonology then?
Okay. Well, I'm not an exorcist. I mean, all
Okay,
priests have the power of it, but
okay,
it's a specialized thing that you have to receive special permission from the bishop to do. I've not
right,
done a full-fledged exorcism. I've done deliverance ministry, but
okay,
what? Well, I guess I was because of my mentoring by my cousin, who's a priest. I was always interested in miracles and apparitions of Mary and the saints, and and things happening around the world. So, those really are paranormal. It's just Christian paranormal. So it wasn't. I didn't find it to be a great step of faith to believe in spirits and all of that because I already believed in the supernatural. But I always liked horror movies, and I was always interested in the supernaturals. Um, and I felt a calling, an inner calling since I was young to help in the area of spiritual warfare in the battle between good and evil. That's really where my interests lie in the paranormal umbrella.
okay. And yeah, as I just made that first mistake by calling you an exorcist,
Yeah, no,
you're
that's
actually
okay.
you're actually a demonologist as well as a spiritual warfare educator. So, what does that kind of entail from your point of view? What's the day to day kind of
Well,
activities?
I mean, demonology, there are people who are like experts in like multicultural history of demons and all of that. And I've learned some from really good demonologists. But as far as when I call myself a demonologist, I mean, there really is no actual grouping or whatever, or, you know, organizational thing. It's just like I know the anatomy of a demon and I know how the demon works. And really, they're a high level and low level, but a demon is a demon is a demon, and you deal with them the same way. So, there's hundreds of people out there calling themselves demonologists. And I said, well, you know what? I studied it in the seminary, so I'm going to call myself a demonologist. Why not? I studied this. I studied the theology of it.
Right. And there's one thing that I find really fascinating talking about the paranormal world is that anybody that gets scratched, they automatically think it's a demon.
Right.
And the philosophy that I come back and tell them is, well, if I want to speak to you and you've got your back to me, I'm going to call your name. If you don't answer me, the next natural thing is for me to reach out and to try to get your attention. So, people being scratched, that could be just the interaction of a spirit trying to get your attention. And it's not necessarily a malevolent entity that's causing that.
Correct. Correct. And and that's the thing that a lot of people don't understand. I mean, there's more to it. I mean, you could tell after a while if it's malevolent. I mean, if it goes beyond that and it's scaring you to death and it's purposely, trying to harm you, then you know it's a malevolent spirit. But, there are spirits trying to get your attention that will move things around, or, you'll find things, you'll hear noises or whatever. And yeah, you're right. It is to get your attention, so that uh, you'll be attentive to whatever they're trying to communicate. So
Yeah. And I know that the first time you and I met, you was actually teaching a, a guest speaker from the
hmm
Paranormal Phenomena Research and Investigation, or PPRI. and we did a 4 week course of demonology, and it's actually really interesting to actually break it down. Is because when, and correct me if I'm wrong, when people are talking about demons, we're talking about the Roman Catholic Church. We're not talking about other religions. That's correct. Am I right?
Well, from my perspective, it would be because that's what I operate out of. Well, not just necessarily the Roman Catholic Church, but the Christian Church,
Okay,
you
yeah.
know. But again, we handle things a little differently than, say, people who are more fundamentalist or Pentecostal. We might be a little bit more discerning as to trying to find out whether it is an actual evil spirit or something else that can be explained, you know.
Yeah, because there's a very fine line between having items moving and it being of a potential paranormal nature
Hmm.
rather than having things moving and it being of a demonic nature.
Correct. Correct. And there's
So,
also, there's things called telekinesis or even
yeah.
poltergeist activity, you know.
So, if somebody was experiencing, let's just put it, something bad in their house that they can't explain, and they call you in, do you have kind of like a checklist of things that you, yes, no kind of thing to determine if it's a demonic or something else?
Well, I think that would be try to be set before I even go in.
Okay.
So there'd be questions I would ask and get information so that I can look at it all and get a game plan as to what we do when we come in. And so that when I come in, if there's activity going on, again, I don't conjure. And that's the thing. When we go in there for an investigation, we're not conjuring. That's forbidden by the scriptures. We're trying to figure out if there's something already there and what it is that's already there. That's enough problems. You don't want to start conjuring something in that's
Oh,
not there.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, if it's if it's doing harm, if it's threatening, if like you talk about the scratches, if it continues and it's really bad, then I would go in and try to ask, and I would ask in the name of the Lord for it to answer my questions, or to give me some kind of a response, you know. And if I find after an investigation that it's can be explained, and sometimes it can be, there are things that faulty or old appliances give out that can give someone the feeling of being watched and paranoia. And then I would say, I think there's this case here. If you need to update, some of your appliances, you won't have those. Again, I forget what it's called coming out of them.
EMF,
Uh, yeah, yeah,
electromagnetic field. Yeah.
yes, yes, and also if it's things that people are hearing and all that, and then it can be explained. Like there was one where like the washing machine or dryer was going off at a certain time, and when I was upstairs, I was able to hear it and say, well, this is what it was, or whatever. Or and sometimes it could be a person's emotional state that 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 create hallucinations in their own mind, which is tough because I would think they'd be relieved, but a lot of times they're not, and you can't convince them otherwise that it's not demonic. That's tough, and I'm sure you've come across that. Uh,
Exactly. And one thing that you actually taught us on the course, and Elliot carried on in the other weeks, is that just because people are hearing voices or are experiencing, it doesn't mean that it's of a paranormal nature. It could be of
correct.
a mental health nature, and that's a
Yes.
very fine line between
Yes.
the two.
Yes. And and what I tell people, and sometimes it can be a little bit of both. So if I find that there's something going on, if there's trauma going on, it seems like there's trauma in the person, I would say, okay, I'm going to bless your house. I'll do a house liberation. I said, but you have to do part B. And part B is I think you need to get checked out by a psychologist or a medical doctor, and you need to do what they tell you. So both of those together, the two prong A and B, will help to alleviate the problem. But if you do one without the other, it's not going to be complete.
Yeah, and that's a really good point because we have a questionnaire. So if you call us to say that you're experiencing X, Y, and Z in your property, we will send you a questionnaire. This questionnaire is like 9 pages long.
Hmm.
It really goes into depth, but it covers, have you suffered any mental health issues? Are you on any medication? Are you a regular drug taker? That kind of thing. Do you drink? And I feel that we have to cover that
Hmm.
because you have to get all the jigsaws to that puzzle before you
Yes.
can put it together. So our mentality is if somebody does not want to answer all those questions, then it's either not as realistic as what they say, or they've got something that they're hiding.
Yes. Yes. And also things of how often do you watch horror movies or paranormal shows? Have you had psychics come in? Because let me tell you, sometimes you get ones that are just not authentic, and they can lead you down the wrong path. You know, so we ask all those type of questions too. What was their exposure to the paranormal before? Had they had an
So
investigation?
exactly, yeah. So can you remember your very first time that you got involved with a unknown entity?
Yes, I I was with a couple from Rhode Island. I don't know if you know the Johnsons,
I've
Keith.
heard of the name.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Keith and his wife Sandra, and I become friends with them, and I would go to watch their show. They did a weekly or biweekly show, and so we got to talking. Well, one day he asked if I would assist at a house that there was some activity. So I went and I blessed the house. I didn't experience personally too much, but it did solidify, like, yeah, this is what I want to do as part of my ministry. So, and then soon after that is when met Ryan Buell with Paranormal State, and would we get called in if there was a a docker case for the show. So, but yeah, that was my first actual entering a house like that. I've had encounters with evil before, but not in that kind of type of it.
so when you get invited, for want of an easier expression, do you protect yourself before you go? Do you do prayer and,
Yes,
and that kind of thing?
yes. I This is a thing I try to share with, and I used to do a long time ago when I had another group called PWSM. That we would go and give little workshops on what to do for investigators. And I tell them you need to protect yourself because you don't know what you're walking into. It could be you think it benign and it could be something malevolent, or you just need to do that. I mean, I advocate that you protect in prayers every day, and I do it every day in protection because if you start doing the work like this, especially encountering Docker entities, then you're marked. They know who you are. So you got to cover your bases, or else you're going to get attacked. Even in your personal life. And it's not a pitchfork and horns, but it's just like little things will get to you. And but yeah, I always tell them you need to pray before you get and protect yourself before you go into a location, and then after, and you need to command that nothing follows you home because that can happen. That can
Yeah,
happen.
and that's actually interesting because correct me if I'm wrong, but for somebody who likes the paranormal, likes to go on investigations, but is not necessarily religious, if they do a prayer, is it going to have it's not going to have the same effect
No.
to if somebody who's religious like yourself.
Yes.
So how can someone like that protect themselves?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if you're going into the paranormal, and this is a rather newer phenomenon, younger groups coming up, they don't want to hear the wisdom of the ages. They think we're all washed up, oh, you don't understand. Uh, but if you believe, that in the paranormal, you've got to believe in good versus evil. You got to believe God and the devil. And yeah, you're right. If you don't have that faith, then you're only saying words. Like I remember seeing people wearing rosary beads around their neck, and it's like, okay, uh, those rosary beads, I don't care if they're blessed or not. What the power of the rosary, it comes through the prayer, and the reason why they're powerful with me is because I pray the rosary every day. And that's where the power comes from. If not, it's a trinket. A blessed trinket, yes. Okay. But it's not going to have the same power and efficacy, So it's your personal faith that has to be your shield. If not, then, and this is what I see happening nowadays. In some instances, they go in without that and they end up making things worse for the clients because they open doors and they don't know how to shut them,
Yeah.
and using other
Um,
methods of divination, which can be dangerous.
yeah, because I know that anytime anybody uses the D word, they're automatically assuming that something's of a dark nature, but it's not always going to be the case. I was
Mm,
talking to somebody a few months ago about fairies. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's not a demon. And people get, or people want to tar everybody with the same brush, so to speak, by, okay, because I got scratched or because it's moving things around, it's got to be a malevolent entity, it's got to be bad, so it must be a demon. But in
right.
reality, it's not.
Yeah, growing up, I always thought fairies were benign thing until I got into the paranormal world, and it's like, oh, the fae, they're not always kind. And it's like,
Yeah.
wow. So people from the British Isles, it's like they can be formidable.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So, what would you say the percentage? I know it's going to be difficult to put a number on it, but the percentage of genuine demonic uh, infestations, if you like, compared to, okay, this is not of a demonic nature. Can you kind of put like a percentage to that?
Yeah, if I do 10 cases, I would say six maybe have some kind of a merit to it. Some kind of a merit to it. Not demonic necessary, but some. Uh, well, man, maybe five, maybe half and half. So my philosophy is it never hurts to bless a home. It gives peace of mind and it puts positive in the house. So yeah, but because of my work on Paranormal State, it's usually when I went in to do it is after they've already established that there's something there. So I would say all of them had some kind of a merit to them.
Yeah,
But I've been called into a number that just, or I know they're inviting it in and they don't want to do it. They want me as a magician. You go in, you do the work, you leave, and they don't have to do anything. And it's like, no, it's kind
yeah,
of like if you contract like a disease, like say you have cancer or whatever, and you got to follow a regimen after that, and you'll be okay, or whatever, diabetes like I have, but you cannot not do anything because your life has already been touched by this disease. Same thing with the demonic, you know, and even if it's positive spirits, you got to create, rules for your location and say, okay, you got to be you're the homeowner right now. And I try to cross spirits over. In my Catholic faith, we believe in purgatorial spirits, which makes all the reason in the world, makes all the sense in the world, in the paranormal world, that they're on their way, but for some reason, whatever, they're either stuck or they didn't want to go, and they have free will. So I have tried to pray them into the light, and I do that every time I say mass. I ask Saint Michael and one of the other angels to give me souls to the mass, that during that prayer they'll be released into the light. And so, I like to think that that has a good. I hate going into haunted places and keeping souls there who might be trapped. I think that's cruel, and I think it's Disneylandish to do to them
Yeah,
at their be.
and it's all about money
Oh,
in
it
some
is.
locations.
It is.
So if this location like really annoys you, you'll just go in and cleanse it just to get your own back. So,
Yeah.
so this will stop you getting your money.
Yeah. Well, there was one place that's notorious, and we went into an area, and a bunch of people were there. So we got they got activity, and I happened to walk in there, and we found out that it was saying, "Help me, help me." So I said, "Okay, guys, I think this soul wants to cross." So I had them all help. So I said, "Okay," and I commanded. I said, "Now I ask that nothing can prohibit you." And I had them all sing Amazing Grace and then say the Lord's Prayer as the soul crossed, and then to give a sign. And there was like a blinking of light. And I said, "See what we did? Collectively, we saved at least a soul. I don't know how many, but at least one." And I said, "I don't dare tell anybody that from the place."
and and that brings me nicely towards my next point. So when you cleanse or when you move a spirit on, how many different prayers do you is there, or do you just stick to the Lord's Prayer, or is there other prayers that you could use?
What I do is, at least during mass and stuff, I have Saint Michael, and then there's another archangel, Remiel, who also escorts souls, and then we have a saint that's the patron saint of purgatorial souls, Saint Nicholas of Tolentino. So I asked the three of them to be with me. So Saint Michael to light the way with his fiery sword, and the other two to escort the soul. I have a little ritual that I do, and I pray for mercy for the soul, and then I ask, uh, I read a psalm, and then I ask during the Lord's Prayer that they move on. And it's simple. It's simple.
Okay, so at what point after doing all your demonology and your spiritual warfare, at what point did somebody walk up to you and go, "We would like your assistance on a TV show"?
Well, that happened with Paranormal State, because what happened was I was watching, Ghost Hunters, and I was really getting into it because it's like growing up, I had an interest, but none of my friends did. So it went latent, you know. And now it's like, oh, I'm watching this stuff. So my parishioners, my young parishioners said, "Oh, Father Bob, if you like paranormal, if you love Ghost Hunter, you're going to love Paranormal State." And I said, "What's that?" And they told me, and I watched it, and I liked it because Ryan was faith based. He would pray. So I took a chance and wrote to him, and he wrote right back, and that began a friendship. And I told him I really wanted to meet him sometime, and he was in Massachusetts, right next door to Rhode Island. And he said, "Would you want to meet?" I said, "I'm there." So then a few days later, he said, "Well, we might need your we might need your expertise. Would you mind helping us if we need it?" I said, "Sure." So he said, "Well, how do you feel about being on TV?" I said, "I've never been on TV." So, and we worked out well together, and it was fine. And that began a few seasons until it was tough. I mean, I had a full-time job as a pastor, so, and sometimes we wouldn't know till days, like a couple of days before. and I couldn't just after a while just drop everything and my duties and go. So, but 3 seasons I worked, and I got to meet a lot of wonderful people and work with a wonderful group, uh, PRS. So, but yeah, that was that, and then a couple of seasons of The Haunted from two of our cases that they picked up, and then I just recently did one with Expedition X on the Discovery Channel, I believe.
Yeah, I think
And
so. Yeah.
yeah, they were great, great, great. So that's probably going to come out in the fall sometime because it was right next to the Conjuring house. So I'm sure they're going to
Oh,
put that out once the movie comes on. So,
yeah, and that's that's got a whole story within itself.
oh my gosh, I don't know if you've been following it, but it's embarrassing
And
that the
yeah,
owner. Oh,
I've seen some of it, and it's like, what is going on? It's just crazy.
yeah,
But
yeah.
one one thing that I would like to speak to you about is you had the honor to work with Ed and Lorraine Warren.
I didn't work with Ed. Ed had already passed, but I did
Oh,
work
okay,
with
okay,
Lorraine.
okay.
Yes, yes.
How has that been for somebody who's so pristine in the paranormal world?
It was wonderful. We got along immediate. There was an immediate relationship there, and of course, she loved priests, so it was a natural thing. But I learned, I learned from her, and she was just a joy. She had a great sense of humor. She was great to hang out with, in between what we had to do. And I valued that. I really did. And in fact, I tell people this all the time. At one point, we were just hanging out in the hotel at the bar and sharing a glass of wine. And I said, you remind me of a paranormal Mary Poppins. I said, I could just see you with a bun in her hair, coming down with your umbrella, and then your pack. You have holy water and the Bible and rosary beads and all that. And she started giggling. She loved it. She loved it. So
You
it all
can
goes, "Hello, Mary
just imagine,
Poppins."
just imagine that because, like over here, I know it was released a while ago, but they showed the Enfield Poltergeist three-parter, and the Warrens actually went to England to help with that. And I know it's TV, and things that are on TV are not exactly
Yeah.
how it happened in real life. But it was
Even The
really interesting.
Conjuring, even the original Conjuring, some the beginning was pretty accurate, but then the other facts became skewed. It's like, why? Why are you going to do that? The truth is more scarier than fiction, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. So the fact that you've always been involved with the paranormal, have you actually experienced anything that you can't explain yourself?
Yeah, but I will tell you that, and as long as the time, and I think it's because I'm a priest. I've never seen like a full bodied apparition yet, at least not of a spirit. I've not seen things fly off shelves and all of that. I've gone to places where they say, "Oh my gosh, the cupboard's open." I said, "Oh," I'm going, "Yes, I want to see this," and it goes dormant when the priest comes in because they don't want to. They don't want to give away.
Yeah,
So it's like, but I have like the last house that I had done. Yeah, I actually went into a room to bless it, and I got felt pushed out of there. Um, and a little bit, I'm not psychic. I'm not a medium. Nothing like that. But there is a thing of discernment of spirits, and lately it seems that I've been that's been heightened a little bit, probably to do the work. And I call that the gifts of the Holy Spirit. And when I pray for healing, sometimes words will come through too, but again, not words, clairvoyant or anything like that, just from the Holy Spirit. And I'll say, "This is a word I have for you. I have no idea what it means, but take it for what it is." But yeah, not I guess it's the hazards of being a priest that they don't want to show that in front of you.
yeah. Occupational hazard.
Some priests have, like exorcists, certainly have. And I've seen, I did one case where I worked on a young lady for a few hours, and then I started to see that that it was formidable and that she was exhibiting signs of possession. I said, "Oh boy, I need to stop right here and now. This is above my pay grade." So I stopped, and then I called the local bishop, who I happen to know, and he knew me, so that was great. And so he said, "Okay, I could handle it from here." I said, "Do you have an exorcist?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Okay." But that is it was an interesting story because when we got called, it was in nearby Massachusetts, so I went with my partner, when we had PWSM. It was just he and his wife, who was our case manager, decided to come with us. So we're driving, and she always loved to have iced tea. So she has iced tea in her hand. She goes, "Ugh, this iced tea smells like urine." I said, "What?" So I go, "Come on." So the husband grabs it, and he smells it. He said, "Oh." So now, of course, skeptic here. I'm going, "Yeah, right." So I grab it. It's like, "Oh, it does." So I said, "Guys, I don't know what we're walking into." I said, "Something's going to happen." We walk into, and she's on the bed in a pool of urine,
Wow,
of her own urine. Yeah.
that's crazy.
Yeah, that was. And I mean, she had a boyfriend who was very muscular, and he could just about keep her down. And she was speaking in languages, and you know, and in guttural kind of tones. So that was the first. I had been, when I was younger, in my 20s, been on a team for an exorcism. I wasn't a priest then, but that one was exhausting because of the amount of time that it took, and not realizing what it was. I just thought it was a deliverance.
That's crazy. Yeah, and I know that a lot of people that are involved with the paranormal, they want to see stuff like that because half of it's because of the interest, a genuine interest in what procedures take place to exercise that spirit from the individual. But I think a lot of it is also a morbid kind of like, I want to see what
Curiosity.
exactly. And do you find that's
Yes.
always the case? Well, not always the case, but do you find that's the case in a lot of examples?
Frustratingly, yes. Like, I've gone on Paracons, and I've been able to hear people say, "Oh, did you go to this place? Did you go to that place? Oh, we're going to this place." And it's all for their own entertainment, going to all these haunted places. But how many clients are you helping? That's the telltale. This is not a club, and it's
Yeah,
like, and that's what I find in some instances, not all, but in some, and that, for me personally, that's frustrating because it's not a game.
no,
It's not a game. So
yeah, and one thing that we do thrive upon with my group is at the end of the day, the the individual that's being affected, the client or whatever you want to call them, their feelings, their emotions are paramount. So if you can go and to prove that it's black mold or EMF, like we mentioned earlier, or they've got a rodent problem, as long as you are helping that person, and then you can find out that it's not paranormal, it may be a little bit disappointing for the team. However, at the end of the day, you're still helping that individual,
absolutely.
and that's what's key right now.
Yes,
It's not to get gold stars and to get your name on Broadway with flashy lights. It's helping that individual.
exactly. And I go for the same with the homeowners. You would think that they would be relieved, and some are, but others are not. They want that to be paranormal.
Yeah,
And there's some cases I've been on too that are kind of well known, that I won't go into for the sake of not wanting to name names, but where they go from one expert to another for attention. They just want the attention. and they're not doing anything to actively rid the spirit,
Yeah,
and that's a shame because that's all for profit. That's all it is.
exactly. And you can watch a lot of these TV shows, and you know damn well that what you're seeing on this person's video is 100% fake. You know
Hmm.
it is. Sort of like, oh, there's that door moving, but what's behind the door? And you never see the other side of the door. Or if you do, there's still enough time that they walk through, open it, and if there's another exit, that someone's had time to actually to leave. And it's really sad
It
that it's
is.
getting like that when you've got genuine people that do want to help people.
Right, and that's the frustration. Even I know Ryan has had that in Paranormal State because not every case gets solved, or not the way that. And you're facing production who wants to make a show, so you've got that tension going on. So it's tough with television, and plus, the frustrating thing is, like with Paranormal State, they might have been there a week, 4 or 5 days doing this, but it all gets encapsulated into a 50-minute show. So people think the reality is within an hour, everything is done, and that's just not
Yeah,
true. You know,
yeah,
It's not based in reality. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
it is. Well, yeah. Unfortunately, we are coming towards the end. So, what's next on the horizon for Father Bob? Got anything in the pipeline?
Yes, next month I'm going to California. My other partner, who's a priest and Orthodox priest in California, he's kind of the West Coast partner. I'm the East Coast partner. He's doing a paracon on the USS Hornet, so I'm going there to
Oh wow,
speak. And actually, I mean, we talk to each other every day, but I've never physically met him. So, it's- but yet
that'll
we
be cool.
work together as partners in the ministry. So I'll get to meet him live for the first time, and uh, and then continue to go to a few places, to Illinois and to Kentucky. Maybe it's the whole Annabelle thing. I don't know where that's going to go.
Oh, yeah. The things that have happened with over the last week with regard to that, it's
Yeah,
shameful.
he was a very good friend of mine.
Oh, sorry to.
Yeah, so I'm going to the funeral this week. So yeah, it's just I can't even watch the TV when it comes on. It's like people have been so cruel, so
Yeah,
cruel.
that's ridiculous. Okay, my friend, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I'm glad that
Same
I've
here.
finally managed. The fact that I've finally managed to tie you down and get you on, even though you've been gallivanting around Europe on vacation. But
It's
like
also a
I say,
pilgrimage.
okay. Let's mention that bit as well. But Father Bob, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I thank you for your time. You
Oh,
have a
you're
great
welcome.
rest of the evening. Thank you.
You
Take
too.
care.
Take care. Bye bye now.